Imagine a single tiny key, a piece of metal no longer than your finger. What if I told you this simple object held the fate of 1,500 souls and the world's most famous ship? On the night of April 14, 1912, the lookouts in the Titanic's crow's nest were scanning the North Atlantic with nothing but their bare eyes. They were effectively blind to the danger ahead. The binoculars that could have saved the Titanic were on board, but they were useless. They were locked in a cabinet, and the lookouts didn't have the key. 30 seconds of warning was all they needed to change history. This wasn't just a collision with an iceberg. It was a chain of catastrophic errors, engineering shortcuts, and human arrogance that the world has ignored for over a century. Today, we uncover the shocking truth. The RMS Titanic. She was the pinnacle of Edwardian ambition, the largest, most luxurious vessel ever built, carrying the hopes of 2,200 people across the Atlantic. She was a floating palace, a testament to industrial might. The press and her builders called her practically unsinkable, a claim that would soon become the most tragic irony in history. We've all heard the legend: a giant piece of ice, a moonless night, and a tragic accident. But the truth is far more complex and far more disturbing than a simple natural disaster. Beneath the surface of the official narrative lies a story of corporate greed and engineering flaws. In this deep dive, we challenge everything you think you know about the Titanic's final hours. The Titanic's unsinkable status came from her revolutionary watertight compartments. But there was a fatal design flaw that the public never knew about until it was too late. The bulkheads were not fully sealed at the top. They only went a few feet above the waterline. When 5 compartments were breached, the weight of the water pulled the bow down and the ship essentially drowned herself. To meet impossible deadlines, the builders used lower-grade iron rivets in the bow and stern. These rivets were the ship's Achilles heel, containing high amounts of slag that made them brittle. In the freezing 28-degree water, these rivets became as fragile as glass. When the iceberg grazed the side, the rivets didn't bend. They simply snapped off, unzipping the hull and letting the ocean in. Then there was the rudder. It was technically too small for a ship of 46,000 tons. This limited its turning radius, a flaw that became fatal the moment the iceberg was spotted. When First Officer Murdoch ordered the engines to reverse, he inadvertently sealed the ship's fate. Reversing the engines reduced the flow of water over the rudder, making the ship nearly impossible to turn. By trying to stop, they lost their only chance to steer clear. Experts now believe that if the Titanic had maintained her speed, she might have narrowly avoided the collision entirely. Even more shocking, if the Titanic had hit the iceberg head-on, she likely would have survived. The reinforced bow was a massive crumple zone designed to take a frontal impact. Only 2 compartments would have flooded. Human error played an equal role. Captain Edward Smith was a legend of the seas, yet he allowed institutional overconfidence to cloud his judgment on that final, moonless night. The missing binoculars were a result of a last-minute crew change. Second Officer David Blair left the ship with the cabinet key still in his pocket. Without them, the lookouts were guessing in the dark. Despite receiving 6 ice warnings that day, the Titanic was racing at near maximum speed. They were trying to arrive in New York early to make headlines, ignoring the solid wall of ice reported in their path. The conditions were a perfect storm for disaster. The sea was flat calm, meaning no waves were breaking against the base of icebergs. In the dark, the berg was essentially invisible until it was too late. On the morning of April 14th, a scheduled lifeboat drill was canceled. When the disaster struck, the crew was untrained and panicked. This is why so many boats were launched half-empty. The first boat, capable of carrying 65 people, left with only 28. In the end, there were lifeboats for only half of those on board, a decision made to keep the decks looking uncluttered for luxury. The communication breakdown was total. Wireless operator Jack Phillips was exhausted and overwhelmed by passenger messages. He set aside a critical warning from the SS Mesaba and never told the bridge. When the SS Californian tried to warn them, Phillips famously snapped, "Shut up, I am busy." The Californian's operator turned off his radio and went to bed just minutes before the impact. Assistance was only 20 miles away. As the Titanic sank, the RMS Carpathia was the only ship to answer the call. Captain Arthur Rostron pushed his ship through the ice field, risking everything to reach the survivors. They arrived at 4 a.m., finding only lifeboats and a sea of debris. The Carpathia took on 705 survivors, but for 1,500 others, the rescue came too late. The scene was one of unimaginable grief. When the Carpathia arrived in New York days later, thousands waited in the rain. The world was in shock. How could the unsinkable ship be gone? The search for answers began immediately. The U.S. Senate and the British Board of Trade launched massive inquiries. They grilled the surviving officers and the owners of the White Star Line, seeking to place blame for the staggering loss of life. The inquiries revealed the lack of lifeboats, the ignored ice warnings, and the speed at any cost mentality. It was a trial of an entire industry's standards. Laws were rewritten to ensure such a tragedy would never repeat. The legacy of these hearings is the 1914 Solis Convention. It mandated 24-hour radio watches and enough lifeboats for every person on board. A standard we take for granted today was forged in the fire of 1912. For 73 years, the Titanic rested in total darkness, its exact condition a mystery. Many believed she had sunk in one piece, while others argued she had broken apart. The world waited for proof. On September 1, 1985, Robert Ballard and his team finally found her. The first image to appear on their monitors was one of the ship's massive boilers. The unsinkable ship had been found at last. The discovery settled the debate. The Titanic had indeed broken in half at the surface. The bow and stern lay nearly 2,000 feet apart, surrounded by a vast field of personal belongings and debris. The discovery settled the debate. The Titanic had indeed broken in half at the surface. The bow and stern lay nearly 2,000 feet apart, surrounded by a vast field of personal belongings and debris. From the brittle rivets in the hull to the missing key and the ignored warnings, the Titanic was a chain of avoidable events. Every link in that chain was forged by human overconfidence. Modern science has finally given us the answers that the survivors couldn't. We now know that the ship was literally designed to fail under the specific conditions of that night. The tragedy changed the world forever. It forced us to confront the limits of our own creations and led to the most significant safety reforms in maritime history. Today, every passenger on a ship is guaranteed a seat in a lifeboat. We learned, but the price was 1,500 lives. But the wreck itself is disappearing. Iron-eating bacteria are slowly consuming the Titanic. In a few decades, all that will be left of the unsinkable ship is a rust stain on the ocean floor. As she fades away, her story becomes even more important. It serves as a permanent warning to future generations. Never let the brilliance of your invention blind you to the reality of the world. To summarize, the Titanic didn't just hit an iceberg. She was doomed by brittle rivets, a faulty compartment design, a missing cabinet key, and a series of ignored warnings. It was a failure of systems and a failure of leadership. The simple narrative of a tragic accident hides a much more complex and instructive reality of human error. By looking beyond the surface, we honor the memory of those lost and ensure that the lessons of the Titanic are never forgotten. History is rarely as simple as it seems. What do you think was the most shocking truth we uncovered today? Was it the rivets, the missing key, or the book written 14 years early? Share your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into hidden history, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're on a mission to uncover the truths behind the world's greatest mysteries. Don't forget to like this video and check out our other deep dives. Your support helps us keep the history alive. What mystery should we tackle next? Let us know. The story of the Titanic will never truly be over. As long as we keep searching for the truth, she stays afloat in our collective memory. The Titanic was not alone. She had two sister ships, the Olympic and the Britannic. Their stories are equally fascinating and filled with their own triumphs and tragedies. The Britannic, meant to be even safer than the Titanic, sank in just 55 minutes during World War I. It remains the largest ship on the ocean floor, a silent witness to another era of disaster. Only the Olympic lived a full life, serving as a reliable old reliable for decades before being scrapped. She is the only one of the three sisters that didn't meet a tragic end at sea. Our modern perception of the Titanic is heavily influenced by cinema. The 1997 blockbuster brought the tragedy to a new generation, but it also blurred the lines between fact and fiction. Today, the wreck is protected by UNESCO as a site of historical importance. It is a memorial to the 1,500 people who lost their lives, a place that must be treated with the utmost respect. As we close this investigation, remember that the Titanic is more than just a shipwreck. It is a mirror held up to our own humanity, our brilliance, our bravery, and our fatal flaws. The unsinkable ship, the unthinkable tragedy, and the truth that finally came to light. The Titanic remains a haunting reminder of the limits of human achievement. Thank you for watching.